Here's the truth. If you're constantly busy but not actually growing, you're probably spending a lot of times doing the 80% of things that's not really the most important. It's not the income producing things. In this episode of Refined Mindset, we're going to talk about the 5 things we should be doing that really matter, the 20% that actually creates results, and how to know when it's time to start building systems and tools and leverage around them. Because you want freedom, growth, and consistency, it starts with always doing the 20%. So every business follows the same principle, the same pattern. 20% of their actions produce 80% of the work. Well, what's the other 80%? Depending on your business, in real estate, it could be administrative tasks, it could be scheduling, it could be coordinating things with an inspector. We call that the noise, right? It's a task that keep you busy, but is not necessarily the most productive, right? It's not the income producing. What you see in top producers when they start to scale is not because they're doing more of everything, it's that they're hyper focused on the 20%. They either have focused it and they've got it ingrained, or they built systems and models that protect their time inside that 20%. So the moment we as agents start to honoring the 20%, that's when you go from an agent, even self-employed, to a business owner. You start looking at things differently. You start looking at what's the most dollar per hour activity. As you start to scale up, then you even say, out of that 20%, what is the 20% from there that can even be more income producing? So let's break down what the actual 20% looks like in real estate. There's 5 things that we should be doing at all times. And what's so cool is these 5 things are in the order of priority, and it's usually in chronological order. I say usually, sometimes it can vary. Here's what's really pretty cool about this is if you know this order, you understand that the number one thing, which we're going to talk about, is always the most important thing and it doesn't stop. We also know that if I don't do that number one thing, number two doesn't happen, right? So let's talk about it. The first thing, lead generation and follow up. This is our foundation. If we are not building, strengthening relationships, meeting new people, there is no foundation, there is no business, there is no number 2 to 5, right? You can't negotiate or close a deal if you never started at talking with anyone. We're the doctors of real estate. We want to make sure we know we have a service that we can provide. We're not salespeople, we're service providers, right? Most people don't have the full understanding of how real estate transaction works. I'm not saying everyone, but most people don't understand it. That's our job, right? We go to the doctors, we ask questions, the doctors help us, guides us. We need to take that same approach. So lead generation, whether it's whether it's talking to your database, open house, cold calling, social media, whatever it is, we need to find ways. And you can break those down into relationship and transactional lead generation, but we need to find ways to consistently look for new relationships to build. Lead follow up, same thing applies. If there's anyone that I need to follow up with, if someone in the pipeline, right? We lead generate to create dots on our calendar. We lead follow up on a scheduled way to keep those dots there and to strengthen them, right? So lead generation, lead follow up is the number one thing we're doing in chronological order and priority. Second thing we do, and it's a chronological order, right? Once we lead generate, we lead follow up at a high level, we move to appointments. Generally, that's the natural order of things, right? So if I talk to someone and they have the goal to buy, they have the goal to sell, whatever it is their real estate goal, then we need to set up a time to go over the goals and the plan. So the second thing is appointments. This could be a buyer consultation, buyer appointment, listing consultation, listing appointment, or even just putting someone with a lender, right? It could be a repeat person and they already understand the business, they understand things. They just want to know, maybe their question is, well, how much can I afford, right? So once we've generated the leads by the number one thing, Then the next step is to get face to face, build that relationship, build that rapport, help out with figuring out what is the goals, how can we set up that game plan, right? That's really where our relationships and trust gets stronger, because face to face is always going to be the best conversion. Now in the world we're at, now where there's a lot of technology, even a Zoom, even a Google Meet or something like that, it's still better than nothing. But you want to be able to show you care, right? Because no one knows how much you know. No one knows how much you. No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So keep that in mind. Second thing, appointments. So now we're on the third thing. That's showing property when you're working with a buyer, or getting a listing ready if you're working with a seller. You can see the chronological order. Guess what? Number one still hasn't stopped. This doesn't mean we stop doing number one, right? We want to create those pipelines. But number three thing is showing property, being strategic, setting the expectation, making sure price, size, location makes sense, assuming this is the buyer's pre-approved already, right? On the seller side, getting that listing ready. A lot of times, what we as buyers agents are looking at property, there what we don't see is everything that happens prior to that listing, right? There's a lot of work involved, maybe contracting, staging, photos, helping the seller, get different resources. Sometimes if you're doing a probate or estate, sometimes it's more than just that, right? So that's the third thing we do, is that it's getting to the point of showing property with the buyer, and also if you're on the listing side, getting a listing ready. So the fourth thing, writing or receiving offers. So if you're representing the buyer at this point, with setting the expectation in this chronological order, now we're making offers, right? We're trying to negotiate the house that the client wants for the price that they want in the timeline they want. If you're on the seller side, we're working our formula to get it, make sure it's a price for condition, make sure the staging and the photos and all the marketing represents that, make sure that stage and the feedback represents that, make sure we're keeping we're watching the market, right? We price watch. That's the goal. That's the fourth thing, is we're making offers or receiving offers, right? Now here's the key. This is going to lead to the next step. So the fifth thing we do as agents is we negotiate. This is the part where you're negotiating to make an offer, you're negotiating your receiving offer. If you notice on here, this is where we consider most of the 80%. As an agent that's in under contract, the agent should only be stepping in when there's a negotiation period. So either you're making an offer, you're receiving an offer, there's a home inspection contingency, there's appraisal contingency negotiations, there's termite, there's well septic, whatever it is, that's the only time the agent should be stepping in to negotiate, right? This is the ultimate goal. Not saying the other part, but there's a lot that's not important, but there's a lot of the 80% when you're under contract, right? Because guess what? Number one does not stop. We cannot stop lead generating and lead follow up, even if we have four number threes, two number fives. I feel like I'm talking about a value meal. All those numbers are beautiful, but the number one thing cannot stop. So, when do you know it's time to build systems or bring in leverage? Honestly, when the 80% starts to interrupt and interfere with the 20%. Let me give you an example. If you're lead generation, you're doing number one thing doesn't stop. You're doing at a high level. Well, the byproduct is what? Number two, you're going to be setting up appointments. So you're structured your day that in the morning is generally lead gen time, in the afternoon is my appointments, right? Or also, number three thing, which is showing or getting a listing ready, that also happens in the afternoon. So you may have a week, you cannot stop number one. That's your lead gen time. Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday, Friday morning, the formal lead gen time. You then have appointments in the afternoon, number two things. You then have showings as well in the afternoon. Well, at what time are you supposed to do the compliance part? At what time are you supposed to be doing coordinating for scheduling showings? At what time are you supposed to be doing anything that's not the top five things? That's when you need to start looking at leveraging administrative work, right? So here's the best way to think about it. What you do in that moment, meaning, from the time you say, okay, those five things I'm doing, I need to get rid of the 80% of that. So I'll give you an example. If I schedule, I'm doing the lead generation thing, that's number one. I schedule an appointment, that's number two. At this point, depending on where you're at, depending on your laws and your state laws, who gets the document ready? Well, if I don't have time to do that because it's interfering with my numbers thing, that's something an administrative person can do. Get that buyer agreement ready, get that listing agreement ready. Okay, that makes sense. Let's say that I'm showing property. Again, if I may not have time to schedule, I cannot knock away from number one and I cannot knock away from number two, but I don't have time to schedule showings, then you leverage that either to a person to do the showing or you leverage in terms of administrative person to schedule the showings, right? So you document from the things you're doing what is it that's not the important core task of it. And that applies for number two, number three, even sometimes number one, right? You can even have administrative person set up your database, set up your cold calling, all that stuff. Or if you don't set it up on a Sunday, usually it's better Sunday, but you can have someone set that up, all like that whole thing. Once you document, okay, I need someone to fill in this gap. Who can then send this document for me? Well, write it down, document it. You just created a model. The model is I need to create something that allows a client to sign a document. Well, how do I do that? You have different ways to leverage. What is the tool that we use? What is the system that I need to create? And is there a person that can help me? Once you can figure that out and say, okay, the system is how I do it, the tool is with what, and the person is who does it, now you can start documenting and scaling that. So now, whenever you have, let's say, getting ready for a consultation, you can say, hey, you can implement a system that says, hey, here's the information needed, this person will use these tools with this, the way they're going to do it is this system to get the documents ready, right? That's when you know it's time to start building a business, when the other stuff gets in the way of the five things. So here's the thing: systems don't make you robotic, they don't make you less of an awesome agent, or it doesn't mean your customer service goes away. It makes your mindset shift into the most important thing. Everything else is important, even the 80%, but it's not our main job, right? So they won't replace our personal touch. They're not going to replace our compliance strategy, things like that. It helps us focus on the one thing that matters the most. It's really connecting with the clients. It's really setting up a game plan. It's really building the relationships. It's really strengthening the relationships. So when you start operating with clarity and structure, something powerful happens. People notice. You're going to attract like-minded individuals. So agents will start asking, how are you doing this? Clients are going to say, wow, how are you still showing a lot of homes? And what they don't see is an awesome system that you have created in order to scale and do what we do best, and that is working with clients. So if you're ready to grow, you're ready to focus on your 20%, you want to be aligned with like-minded individuals that have that growth mindset about building the future, building relationships, connect. Let's talk about what leverage looks like for you, because the other aspect of leverage that's important is it's also for your own time, your family time, your spiritual time, your date nights. Leverage is a beautiful thing. The more you can think about how to focus on the one thing and start leveraging, the more your dollars per hour go up, the more time you have, which is very important. Time does not move like this, time moves like this. So we need to stay focused on the 20%. So let us know if you have any questions to see how our systems that we can help you grow, our systems that help you get to that point of having a life by design and balance. Let us know. Send us a message. There's going to be a Calendly link as well if you want to connect, kind of go over any questions to see if it aligns. Comment, subscribe. Let's get it.